Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Kenya's president apologises for police's heavy-handed enforcement of a coronavirus curfew. Some of the first cases of COVID-19 in the country speak out about their recovery. Also, South Africa ramps up testing measures and tens of thousands of people are due to be screened by specialist teams heading into neighbourhoods this week. And Zimbabwean judges uphold the decision of a lower court that found Nelson Chamisa not to be the legitimate leader of the country's largest opposition party. But first, Kenya's first official case of coronavirus has recovered, and in her first public appearance has said that she wants people to know that despite the very real risks, COVID-19 is something that can be managed and treated. The woman, who has only been identified as Brenda, has said that she thinks that she may have picked up the virus whilst in transit through London. Along with another coronavirus survivor named Brian, the pair held a video conference with President Uhuru Kenyatta on Wednesday. Now, the country's currently logged 59 confirmed cases. Kenyatta has apologised for the behaviour of police who've been enforcing a nationwide curfew brought in last Friday. Officers have been accused of using disproportionate violence. On Monday, a 13-year-old boy was shot dead on his balcony in Nairobi as police forced people into their homes on the street below. A full lockdown has not yet been brought in, but Kenyatta said that tighter restrictions have not been ruled out.
I know, especially when we introduced the curfew, maybe in the initial stages there were some challenges. And I want to apologize to all Kenyans, maybe for some excesses that were conducted or happened. But I want to assure you that if we work together, if we all understand that this problem needs all of us, and we all pull in the same direction, we will overcome.
A top South African scientist who worked on HIV prevention for women and girls in her region has passed away from COVID-19. Tributes have been pouring in from around the world for Professor Geeta Ramji. She was Chief Scientific Officer at the Aurum Institute and a former director at the South African Medical Research Council in Durban. South Africa has logged at least 1,380 coronavirus cases, the most on the continent. In total, 5 people have died from COVID-19 infections in the country. The government's been ramping up testing measures, and tens of thousands of people are due to be screened by specialist teams heading into neighbourhoods this week. Nicolas Chemin tells us more.
Many of Johannesburg's streets are now deserted. South Africa's 21-day lockdown began last Friday. But because of overcrowding, poor areas like Alexandra Township are inevitably less empty. On Wednesday, the authorities disinfected some areas, including piles of rubbish, but residents were pessimistic.
So yabona ukuthi izinto ezinjalo azikho right. Vele thina sizosithola ngoba asinakekekekile la emahostel. Kungcolile kubuka nje buka ama lokhuzana ama drain astakile yonke into udoti ugcwele yonke indawo.
The authorities are not only disinfecting streets but also conducting mass screenings. More than 39,000 tests have already been carried out across the country. President Cyril Ramaphosa said the government would deploy 10,000 field workers to check people for symptoms.
I have to be scared because I don't know my results yet, because this sickness is a serious disease. People are dying, so we are taking it serious. So before you get the results, you are obviously going to be scared because you don't know where you stand.
South Africa has the highest number of confirmed coronavirus infections on the continent, more than 1,000. An additional concern for South Africans is the excessive use of violence by security forces during the lockdown. The police is already investigating the deaths of 3 citizens allegedly killed by patrols for defying the new rules.
Well, Ivory Coast is also seeing the number of confirmed coronavirus cases it's dealing with slowly creep up. Tuesday's official count logged 179 infections. The country is Francophone West Africa's economic powerhouse. Sam Brad-Peace tells us more about the efforts to stem the spread of the pandemic there.
The Ivory Coast is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Its GDP growth averaged about 8% since 2011. But all of that might now be in jeopardy because of coronavirus. Yesterday, the Prime Minister Amadou Gon Coulibaly announced that in 2020, the country is looking at GDP growth of about 3.6%. In other words, a massive cut. He said many sectors of the economy have already been badly impacted. Now, in response, the government has unveiled a number of measures, including subsidies to agriculture and tax cuts for businesses. The government also said it was going to help the most vulnerable people in the country, the poorest 1 million plus households, by covering their electricity and water bills. Now, it's worth remembering that the Prime Minister who announced this is standing as a presidential candidate in October's elections, Amadou Gon Coulibaly, that is. Now, it's unclear whether these measures will help him at the polls, but they will certainly help the most vulnerable in Ivorian society, and I'm sure the stimulus package will be very welcome indeed.
Sam Brad-Peace there for us. Now, health watchdogs have called for caution with the use of chloroquine to self-medicate against coronavirus. The anti-malaria drug has proved popular as a possible treatment in many African communities, despite warnings and several recorded deaths from misuse because of toxic side effects. The drug has ended up in high demand. Although the effectiveness of chloroquine remains unproven, Burkina Faso, Cameroon and South Africa have authorized hospitals to treat patients with the drugs, and many pharmacies on the continent have run out of stock. France, meanwhile, has banned the export of chloroquine. Morocco has requisitioned all stock. Creditor nations known as the Paris Club have agreed to restructure Somalia's debt and cancel about $1.4 billion owed. The move is a bid to open up new sources of finance for a nation that's seen its economy devastated by decades of conflict. Somalia took part in more than 9 hours of discussion with its creditors before the relief was agreed this week. More cancellations could come from bilateral agreements in the future. The Paris Club includes the US, the UK, Norway, as well as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The son of French hostage Sophie Petronat has told France 24 that the French Foreign Ministry received proof of life from her Malian captors early last month. Sébastien Chadeau-Petronat has said that he's relieved to know that she's alive, even though he's not sure of the exact nature of the information about his mother gathered by the ministry. His mother was abducted by armed men in Mali in 2016. French President Emmanuel Macron has said that France is working tirelessly to find her. And Zimbabwe's top court has upheld the decision of a lower court that Nelson Chamisa was not the legitimate leader of the country's largest opposition party. His leadership was contested by the Movement for Democratic Change, the MDC party's vice president, who claims that she is the legitimate heir of iconic opposition figure Morgan Tsvangirai after his death in February 2018. Ryan Truscott tells us more.
This is a blow for Nelson Chamisa, but it almost certainly won't stop him being opposition leader. At the root of this is a long-standing dispute between Chamisa and his party's former deputy president Thokozani Kupe. They fell out after the death of the MDC's founding president Morgan Tsvangirai in 2018. Chamisa took control of the party shortly after Tsvangirai's death, but Kupe said that according to the party constitution, she should have taken over as acting president. And then one of her supporters took it to court, and now the Supreme Court has ruled in her favour. She's a lot less popular than Chamisa. She stood against him in elections in 2018 and got 45,000 or so votes compared to more than 2 million for Chamisa. The problem may now be that this court ruling will be used by Chamisa's opponents to strip his party of its assets, such as the party's headquarters in central Harare. The treasurer, David Coltart, was saying today that he fears the MDC alliance may also be deprived of money that was due to be paid to it by virtue of it being the second biggest party in parliament. And of course, cynics say that the timing of the judgment is suspicious because it came on the second day of a 21-day lockdown designed to curb the spread of coronavirus. Most people are confined to their homes, so there'll be little opportunity for Chamisa's supporters to take to the streets to protest this. But this afternoon he tweeted to say that people are the supreme court of all politics, so it's clear he still feels he has the people on his side.
Ryan Truscott there for us. Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.